President Trump denies coordinating with the Justice Department over the sentencing of one of his longtime associates. Roger Stone was convicted of 7 federal charges. They include lying to officials and witness tampering. He initially faced up to 9 years in prison, but the Attorney General pulled back that recommendation this week. It's considered a highly unusual move. Paula Reid reports from the White House.
President Trump shrugged off allegations he interfered in the Justice Department's handling of the Roger Stone case.
I'm not concerned about anything.
Attorney General William Barr reversed course Tuesday and sought a lighter sentence for the president's longtime friend. 4 federal prosecutors resigned from the case in protest.
They ought to go back to school and learn, because I'll tell you, with the way they treated people.
The Justice Department insists there was no coordination with the White House. But this morning, the president congratulated Barr for his involvement.
Attorney General William Barr ought to be ashamed and embarrassed and resign.
Democrats charged Barr with enabling an abuse of power.
I have formally requested that the Inspector General of the Justice Department investigate this matter immediately.
The president also targeted the judge overseeing Stone's case, prompting a rare rebuke from his closest ally, Senator Lindsey Graham.
I don't think the president should have tweeted about an ongoing case.
But yesterday, the president penalized the U.S. attorney who oversaw Stone's trial, withdrawing her nomination for a top job at the Treasury Department. Democrats say the president's behavior proves he learned nothing from impeachment.
He can abuse his office. He'll never, ever be held accountable by this Senate. That was the lesson.
To help us put all of this in context, Jessica Levinson joins me now from Los Angeles. She's a professor at Loyola Law School. Jessica, let me see if we understand this correctly. The Justice Department essentially asked the judge to ignore prosecutors' recommendations and give Stone a more lenient sentence. How unusual is this?
Very unusual. So that's exactly right. And what that lays bare is this tension that we've been seeing festering in the administration between appointed members of the Department of Justice and career attorneys, career assistant U.S. attorneys. And that's a tension that we've seen in a number of different situations. Your viewers probably remember the census case where the government changed course and a number of federal prosecutors resigned. This is an exacerbated and bigger version of that, where you see Attorney General Barr, I believe, putting his thumb directly on the scale, saying that's to ask for the president. And instead, we're going to ask for something much more lenient. You typically do not see that kind of tension play out publicly. You don't have assistant U.S. attorneys who are saying, I can no longer be part of this case, or in some cases, even leaving the office.
Now, the White House maintains that they weren't involved in this sentencing recommendation, but the Justice Department changed Stone's recommended sentence after President Trump publicly called it a, quote, miscarriage of justice. And the president, speaking to reporters about this on Wednesday, had this to say.
I want to thank the Justice Department for seeing this horrible thing. And I didn't speak to them, by the way, just so you understand. They saw the horribleness of a 9-year sentence for doing nothing. You have murderers and drug addicts. They don't get 9 years. 9 years for doing something that nobody even can define what he did. Somebody said he put out a tweet, and the tweet, you based it on that. We have killers, we have murderers all over the place. Nothing happens. And then they put a man in jail and destroy his life, his family, his wife, his children. 9 years in jail. It's a disgrace.
Jessica, is the president right? Do murderers and drug addicts not get 9 years in prison?
That's not correct. There's a number of things there that's not correct. One thing I will say to the viewers is sometimes things are the way they look. And what it looks like is that the president has been complaining about Roger Stone, complaining about, I should say, the treatment that he received. He tweeted out that this was a problem. And then the Department of Justice, in a really unusual moment, changed course and asked for a lighter sentence. Is he correct, to your question? Is he correct that murderers are getting 9 years, that high-level drug offenders are getting 9 years? That's not true. One, that largely deals with state law, and there are sentencing guidelines in place. And two, that's simply just not correct. Three, the idea that we can't define the crimes that Roger Stone has been convicted of is also incorrect. We know the statutes. We know what the judge concluded. We know what the jury concluded. And so this isn't some amorphous, we feel like he lied on social media. These are very serious federal crimes, and I think a 9-year sentence is well within the bounds of reason.
Yeah, the crimes included lying to Congress, witness tampering, obstruction of justice. And correct me if I'm wrong, when the recommendation was initially given for 7 to 9 years, that was in accordance with sentencing guidelines. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, this is, if you look at the conviction, if you look at, as you just said, the crimes that have been alleged here, not just alleged, but that were actually perpetrated, this is within the sentencing guidelines. Now, the judge doesn't have to keep to that. On the federal level, a judge can decide to, say, basically, I'm going to give you a big hug, don't do it again. Or a judge can decide to go even more stringent and increase the number of years that's asked. But in terms of, is that a normal ask for these types of crimes? Yes, the answer is yes.
So let me see if I understand then what you're saying. Roger Stone could still face a 9-year sentence. But if he does, could President Trump still pardon him?
Yes. So the president, under the Constitution, the president has broad authority to pardon. And there's been discussions about whether or not the president has the power to pardon himself. But there's almost the great weight of law indicates that, yes, the president does have the power to pardon for federal crimes. What can he not touch? Any potential state crimes. So to the extent that there is a state attorney general who's looking at Roger Stone and alleged wrongdoing, that would only be a governor who could commute those sentences. But there's nothing to bar President Trump from saying, I'm issuing a pardon. It's well within his discretion.
Now, it is striking that all of the prosecutors working on the case resigned after the Justice Department stepped in. What does this say about how they feel about the Attorney General, his actions, and what does this mean for this case?
So I think it's hard to read that action as anything other than a public rebuke. It's hard to read it as anything other than a very aggressive protest to what was happening. There's a number of different, if you look at the American Bar Association and the rules for when can an attorney withdraw, basically attorneys can say, I'm no longer going to be part of this case if their client wants to commit a crime, their client wants to commit a fraud, or if their client wants to take a tact that they find, quote, repugnant. I think this falls within the third bucket. I think that what these federal prosecutors were saying is, I can't be part of this. I don't want my name on it. This change in strategy is not something that I support. I signed something that just said something vastly different a day ago, and therefore do not associate me with this particular ask of a much more lenient sentence.
So the White House still denying that they had anything to do with it, but we do know that the president publicly has been advocating for a reduced sentence for his longtime associate. And then the attorney bar took action. Whether or not that was coordinated, I'll leave to others to discuss. But I wonder if this has future implications then.
Yeah. So you asked me about, what does it mean for this case? It means that it's still within the judge's discretion. It is still up to the federal judge, Judge Jackson, to say, I believe that this is the appropriate sentence. Typically, judges will look at what the prosecution asked for, what the defense asked for, and take that into consideration. There's nothing typical about this case. What does it mean for future cases? My hope is nothing at all. My hope that this is an anomaly situation. It's very important the Department of Justice have independence. It's important the Department of Justice not look like it is just an extension of the administration that is a political arm. So what does it mean for the future? I hope it's just a blip and that this is not precedent setting.
Jessica Levinson, thank you very much.